The city of Newark International Airport.
Hurry up.
A few dozen men in black suits rushed out of the exits, each one with a serious face, as if they were going against a formidable enemy. All the passengers in the airport quickly made way for them, not knowing who could have caused such a commotion. The leader of the men in suits frowned deeply, then suddenly turned and left as if he had suddenly thought of something. Soon they reached the pavement outside the airport. John Crawford was sitting on a long bench, slowly blowing cigarette smoke out from his mouth.
Master hopes you can go back. He misses you very much.
The leader respectfully addressed Ethan as he stood about 5 steps behind him. In front of other people, this leader was of high standing, and nobody dared to go against him. But in front of this young man, he felt extremely lowly.
He misses me? Does he miss my influence? Or my money?
If someone else had said something like that, this leader would have despised him. How could the rich and powerful Hunt family from Chenavali City ever covet anybody else's power and money? But the man in front of him was different. He was the sole heir of the Crawford family. What made this leader even more shocked was that he was known as the God of War of the East, with immense capabilities and jaw-dropping wealth.
When he chased me out of the family and married that vixen 15 years ago, Ethan had died.
Ethan exhaled his last mouthful of smoke.
John Crawford now has nothing to do with that Crawford family back in Genevieve City. Don't send people after me anymore. Otherwise, I will kill each one you send.
His terrifying murderous aura immediately wrapped itself round the leader. The leader was only able to relax his clenched fists after he saw John disappear into the distance. His back was already all wet with perspiration. He was actually nervous in front of John. There was a car ready at the airport car park. John hopped in and immediately made a call.
Charlie, have you arranged everything already?
A voice came through from the other side.
Give me the address.
John immediately hung up. He held a crinkled sweet wrapper in his hand, and his thoughts floated back to 15 years ago. He was 15, when he was chased out of the Crawford house and roamed the streets. He was cold and hungry when a simply dressed little girl gave her only sweet to Ethan. After that he was taken away by a mysterious person. When he first appeared, the entire world trembled. For years later, he was given the name, God of War of the East. He was only 19 years old at that time. Now another 11 years have passed. He had the power of a god and could shock the world, but Ethan had chosen to return quietly. He would never forget that little girl. He couldn't forget those pure eyes. He couldn't forget that kind face. John kept the sweets wrapper away carefully and took a deep breath. If someone he knew saw this, they would get a shock. The great God of War could feel nervous too. Meanwhile, at Haniston Hotel in Newark, it was really lively in here. The famous Dawson family of Newark was receiving applications from men to find the best man to marry their granddaughter, Elise Dawson, and this attracted a lot of attention. Elise was seated in one of the function rooms, clenching her little pink fists, her eyes bloodshot and feeling utterly bullied. Her mother, Mary, was standing on one side, her face redder from anger.
Bill Dawson, they're obviously up to no good. If you're still a man, go and reject your father. You mean you're going to watch them destroy your daughter's happiness?
What crap was this about finding a good husband? Bullshit. Mary didn't believe they were so kind. The Dawsons started as a small shop, and within 15 years, they had expanded and became a third-tier wealthy family in Newark. The head of the Dawson family, Zayden, became an example of a successful entrepreneur who started from nothing. Zayden had 3 sons, Jerome, Joshua, and Bill. Jerome had taken over most of the Dawson family's business. Joshua was in charge of expanding the business in a different city. But William had lost the use of both legs in an accident, so he could only rest at home and was looked down upon. Jerome and Joshua had ganged up to persuade Zayden to agree to find a husband for Bill's daughter, and they even guaranteed to find an excellent man for Elise. And in the end? Never mind that all the candidates were nobodies. One of them was even older than Elise by 10 years, and had a history of mental illness. This wasn't finding a good husband for Elise at all. This was destroying her. Bill's face was also all red. He was as angry as his wife, but he didn't dare to go against his father's wishes. He knew Zayden's temperament. He always made the final decision. There was nobody in the Dawson family who could go against what he wanted to do.
He's Elise's grandfather, so he won't do anything bad to her.
After taking such a long time to think, Bill embarrassedly squeezed these words out of his mouth. Mary was going to faint from anger soon. She pointed a finger at Bill, crying as she shouted,
"How did I marry a weakling like you?"
She knew that Bill was a filial son and was always very obedient to Zayden. After becoming handicapped, he became even weaker and dared not go against Zayden at all. But regardless of which man he chose for Elise as a husband to marry into the family, this matter would still ruin Elise. Their family was going to become the laughingstock of New Arkin. Mary sobbed miserably as she shouted at Bill. Elise cried quietly, while Bill could only grip his numb thigh, showing how much he blamed himself and how helpless he was in this situation.
"Mom, don't shout at Dad anymore."
Elise managed to squeeze a smile out, but there were tear stains on her beautiful face.
"Perhaps Grandpa might find me a really nice man."
Of course she knew this was the ploy of her 2 uncles. After graduating from university, she started working for the Dawson Group and had stellar results in a short span of 2 years, overtaking their children easily. They were worried that she might fight for control over the business, so they instigated her grandfather to find some man willing to marry into the family for her. This way, she would lose her eligibility to take over the business. She knew this, her parents knew this too, but none of them were able to fight back. In the Dawson family, nobody could go against what Grandpa had decided. Nobody. The chime of the clock rang and Elise got up.
"Let's go. If we keep Grandpa waiting, he's going to scold us again."
Bill felt bitterness and helpless when he saw Elise trembling slightly. He dared not look at his wife's begrudging face. He knew that it was hard on them to stay in the family, but at least they didn't have to worry about their living expenses. If they got chased out, what were they going to do? In the main hall of the hotel, the place was brightly lit and all the guests had arrived. Zayden was seated right in front, dressed in an exquisitely made tang suit, holding onto a walking stick, and his face was glowing. "Congratulations, Mr. Dawson. You've gained an excellent grandson-in-law." All the guests were taking turns to congratulate Zayden.
"Dad, it's about time to make the announcement." Jerome was standing next to him, his large and burly figure looked imposing. He looked over at Elise, who was not seated too far away, and announced in a loud voice.
Jerome was standing next to him, his large and burly figure looked imposing. He looked over at Elise, who was not seated too far away, and announced in a loud voice.
"We have the results here, and we have chosen the most promising young man among the applicants."
The most promising young man? Pfft, he knew in his heart that the wonderful son-in-law they had chosen was the worst among all the applicants. This one apparently had some hidden illnesses. But as long as Elise married him, then she would have nothing to do with the family business. Zayden would definitely never allow anything that belonged to the Dawson family to land in the hands of someone with a different surname.
Everyone, Today I would like to formally announce the man we have chosen for my granddaughter, Elise.